Obviously you're familiar with SVs. They're pretty rare cars. You don't see them very much of Aventador SVs. And at this time, I was working for Eurofed. I managed one of their shops down in right inside the perimeter of Atlanta. So we dealt with most of the exotic stuff that would come in. I get a call. It's like 10 or 11 o'clock Friday night, and we didn't really work on Saturdays at that point. But it was the owner of the business. He was like, "Hey, listen, I've got this guy. We had his Aventador SV in last week, just doing a check over. Well, he wrecked it." And I was like, "Okay, what does that have anything to do with me at 10 o'clock on a Friday night?" He was like, "Well, he's trying to get it towed to the shop right now." I'm like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, is there any way you can make it down to the shop?" I'm like, and I lived out in Lawrenceville, which was about 45 minutes away from the shop. Thankfully, it wasn't a busy Friday night, so I was able to get down there kind of quick. Get down there, and I'm expecting maybe like a little curb rash or something like that. No, this thing smacked a curb, and he had had it for I think a week, maybe 8 days. It was gorgeous blue, black accents, carbon fiber everywhere, big SV, big yellow SV with the yellow calipers. I get down to the shop and it's really dark, so I can't really see everything, but we're getting it unloaded and the bumper is just hanging off the car. The front left wheel is bashed in, and I was like, "Oh man, this is gonna be tough." And we're not a body shop, so I figured there was gonna be some mechanical stuff, but it was mostly because he kind of just didn't want people to know about it at that point. We pulled it into the shop, just kind of put it underneath the tarp so that because people would come to the shop. And on Saturday, came back, assessed the damage, needed a wheel, but the bumpers with Lamborghini, I'm sure you're aware, they are VIN coded. And if you buy a bumper from Lamborghini, people are going to know about it. We were able to actually get somebody to fix a bumper. And I mean, literally was hanging halfway, and it was thankfully not made out of carbon fiber, at least not the main portion of it. After about 2 or 3 weeks, we get this bumper back. I bought a new wheel, a refurbished wheel from somewhere in the UK because I couldn't buy a wheel from Lamborghini either. It was a center lug wheel. We actually had to buy the torque wrench and everything else so we could actually get the wheels off. And my technician, we had a heat exchanger that got damaged, a couple little brackets, things like that. Thankfully, we had an alignment rack, but it wasn't an in-ground alignment rack, so we couldn't even get the car up on the alignment rack. So we had to drive it to Snellville after we put it all together. And that was the scariest drive because it was doing this, and I was expecting, us needing suspension parts as well. But we get there, and a testament to Lamborghini's build quality, that thing hit a curb very hard on actually both front and rear. The rear wheel we were able to fix. Got it on the alignment rack. It needed just minor adjustments, and on those they have the shims, so we had to buy the whole shim kit. I think it's the rear needs shims, and the front you can do adjustments. But got it all done. Guy got his car back. Literally 2 weeks later, he calls me and says, "Hey, y'all didn't fix this bumper right." And I'm like, "Okay, what happened?" He's like, "If it's coming apart." I'm like, "Okay, well, why don't you just get it to the shop? We'll take a look at it." He gets to the shop, and first thing I see is scrapes all underneath the front of the car. "Did you pull up on a curb or something? Like, did you pull up on one of those little parking?" He's like, "Yeah, but it should be able to handle that." I'm like, and it had cracked right where we had fixed it. And I was like, "Man, I don't know if this car is like a car for you, to be honest with you." Even with a front end lift, you have all these things that are supposed to help you not run into things. And he was like, "No, no, no, I got to have this car." I don't know what he does. I think he was in crypto. This was 2019. So that was when people were making a load of money off crypto. And he forced us to basically fix the bumper again. So the car was down for another 2 or 3 weeks. And at that time, we did like Tron stripes and stuff like that. He did a bunch of stuff I'm not really a big fan of, but the customer's always right, as we know. Basically, he came and got the car, and after that, he actually took care of it, and he didn't run it in anything else, as far as I know. It might have happened since I've left Eurofed, but yeah, that was probably the most expensive repair. I think over those 3 or 4 weeks, it ended up being 30 or 40 grand, just in just parts, and labor to put it together. I mean, he was at least easy to work with. He didn't call me and, bug me every day asking when his car is going to be done, but probably just not somebody that should be owning a Aventador SV, to be honest with you. So I've worked a lot of different places. I've been in the automotive industry for about 11 years now. And I worked for Mercedes. I worked for a bunch of independent shops in Charlotte. I currently work for BMW, but at the time of this story, I was also in Atlanta. I worked out at Athens Mercedes. brand new dealership. I mean, they had built this thing a year before I started working there. Big old nice, beautiful service drive. We had a street that went literally, it was called, it was, Mercedes Street. So they had made the street for the dealership. And it was a Terry Taylor dealership. So, he had 100 and something dealers. At the time, I'd been there for about 6 months. I actually really liked working there. Manager was really cool. At that time, I had an Audi. It was Audi S3, and I put a hybrid turbo, port injection, bunch of other stuff to support it all, and it was making, I think, about 420 horsepower at the time, which isn't a ton, but for a little four-cylinder, it could get up and go. And they had come out with this thing called a burnout box. I had a set of R888s I just bought because I was having some issues with traction, and it had really good launch control. So, if I spun anything off the line, it would just die and then, spool back up. So I was trying to get my launch figured out. And so I bought this burnout box, and it's literally just a tiny little box with a button, and you attach it to the Haldex controller in the rear. And it's basically just a relay. It just opens and closes. And so you could click it and basically turn off the rear wheel drive on the car. I'd done all this stuff. I put my R888s on, had the wheels mounted, balanced, all this stuff. And it was probably like 8 or 9 o'clock at the dealership. And I'd put the burnout box on. I was like, let me go test this thing out real quick. Let's have some fun. So I go out, and on the main drive all the way down the dealership, I turned it off, and, first and then second, and then just rolled into it. And just 11s all the way down. And I didn't really realize that's what I was doing until I got back. I'd gone all the way through second, all the way through third, basically spinning the tires. And I turn around and I start coming back, and I'm driving back down this drive, basically what a customer would see. And there are just nice, very visible 11s all the way down the entrance drive. It was 8 o'clock at night. I went home. The next morning, I get to work, and my boss was already there. He was like, what is on the drive? And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna fix that. Trust me, I promise you, I will get that off. I'm gonna have to come out here, maybe with a pressure washer, because back in the day, I was a Clemson Sports Car Club, the president, when I went to Clemson, and we had done a bunch of autocrosses there. And so I had some background in getting donut marks off of parking lots, because Clemson got mad at us one time when we, got a little crazy. And so I figured it wouldn't be that hard. I come back the next morning. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning. I get up really early. I go get all this degreaser, whatever I could, get these really good scrub brushes. I get out there. I'm on my hands and knees scrubbing the freaking asphalt, and it wasn't doing anything. I don't know if it was because it was brand new asphalt, or if the R888s just like to lay down some really good rubber. It wasn't doing jack squat. Later that day, the general manager of the dealership brings me in. He's like, John, I know that you're trying to get this fixed, but we have Terry Taylor coming in this weekend. Are you serious? So Terry Taylor's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He was coming to see this brand new dealership that we had just built for who knows how many millions of dollars. And the first thing that he was going to see before he even drove in was burnout marks all the way down the entrance drive. So my face turns bright red, and I'm like, okay. He was like, I need that off. I need them gone. They need to disappear. I was like, okay, I got you. So I come back with a pressure washer at that time. I go rent a pressure washer. I had to go through work that day. Like, I couldn't just leave work and then come back and do it. So at 6 o'clock, I go buy a pressure washer, rent one, and I'm out there, trying to get it off. And the general manager, he's a great guy. He was usually one of the last people to leave. It was 8 o'clock again. He's driving, his GLS, and he's looking down, and he's like, I don't think you're doing anything. I'm like, yeah, I know. And I'd been out there for hours just trying in one little spot, and this just was not coming off. And so this was Friday. Terry Taylor was coming in Saturday. I went home, couldn't sleep that night, to be honest, because I was like, I'm gonna get fired. I mean, this is basically, I'm done. And so I call around the next day, and I'm like, listen, I need your pressure washing assistance. I called 3 different pressure washing places, and only one of them was like, yeah, we can come out there today. I'm like, I don't care what it costs. Yeah, at this point, I need to keep my job. And so they come out there, and they had this, whole trailer with this big ass pressure washer, and, it was heated. And so they start putting chemicals down and everything else. And at first I'm kind of watching them, but then I have to leave because I have customers, I have clients that I'm working with. And about 3 or 4 hours later, like, I'm just sweating because it's probably Friday at like 4 o'clock, and I see them working out there and they don't stop. But Friday around 5 o'clock, I finally get a break and I go out there and it was nice and clean. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I literally got on my knee. I was like, thank you so much for doing this. I gave him probably a $200 tip. That was probably the closest I've ever come to losing my job because of doing burnouts with my Audi in the very front of a brand spanking new Mercedes dealership.
Whether you see the car in person or buy it sight unseen, when you buy a pre-owned car, you need to get an inspection done by a qualified professional. And the nationwide network of trained inspectors from the Lemon Squad is the best way to accomplish that. They give you a great deal and a great bit of information about any car you're looking at very quickly. They've been supporting VINwiki now for 2 years, and I use them personally because when I'm buying a car, I need to know the full story. So check them out now at the link in the description below and use the code VINwiki for 10% off, and never buy a used car without the Lemon Squad.